We all depend on the Great Lakes for many things: drinking, shipping, fishing, sailing, tourism, making a living. But levels across all the Great Lakes are unusually low right now, and Lakes Michigan and Huron are at historic lows. Joining us now to help get to the bottom of this, in Naples, Florida, via Skype, Paul Cowley. He's president of the Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Associations. In Ann Arbor, Michigan, via Skype, Drew Grunwald. He is a hydrologist at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And with us here in our studio, Mary Muter, chair of the Sierra Club Ontario's Great Lakes section, and Adam Chamberlain. He's an environmental law specialist at Borden Ladner Gervais LLP. And we welcome you two here in our studio and our friends in the United States and points beyond. We thank you for joining us for what is our contribution on the agenda to Water Week here at TVO. But beyond that, I have heard just over and over and over from people who watch this program, from any time I'm in cottage country, people are constantly wondering why the water levels are so low. And I know there have been constant discussions about this for many years. I want to start by playing a piece of tape from a public hearing in Midland, Ontario, last summer on the then record low water levels for Lake Michigan and Huron and Georgian Bay, Adam, where you've got a cottage. So let's look at that tape and then we'll come back and chat. Roll tape, please, control room.
What I see is our water levels going down. I see our fish going away, our deer, all our other four-legged animals, our birds. Now I have a question for you. What do I tell my grandchildren? What do my people tell their grandchildren and the faces yet to come? What do these other non-native people here tell their grandchildren? What happened to the water? What happened to my people when they say our rights for our fishing, our hunting? Well, we can't do it anymore because there is no more water.
Mary, do you think she has accurately characterized the nature of the problem?
Yes, I think she has done a great job.
That sounds dire. Is that where we're at?
It is. It's very dire.
How come?
Yes. Well, the ecological impacts from our perspective are very significant. We have lost, before the recent drop, we lost 20% of the highest quality wetlands found anywhere in the Great Lakes.
When you say we, you mean?
We, Sierra Club, in terms of Georgian Bay.
Okay.
The wetlands have lost even more habitat. 80% of Great Lakes fish need wetlands for spawning and or nursery habitat. If they can't find it, they simply don't spawn. We have exposed shorelines where the invasive reed, 10 to 12 feet high, Phragmites, has taken over shorelines. In other places where there were wetlands, there are now 5 and 6 foot tall pine trees that are basically converting what was a wetland into a forest. M&R have documented the
Ministry
decline.
of Natural Resources.
Ministry of Natural Resources,
We
yes.
hate acronyms here, Mary, so
Okay.
every time you use one, I'm going to explain what it really means.
They've documented the declining northern pike fish populations. Last summer, McMaster University, who we work with very closely, put tracking devices into muskie, found them swimming many kilometers, well beyond their normal range, trying to find wetlands they could get into.
This is again Georgian Bay you're talking?
This is again Georgian Bay. Because the water levels have been really near record low for 14 years, the wetlands have shrunk in size, but the plants have become very congested, so the large fish can't move in and out of them. Normally the water levels fluctuate, the plants are more diverse, it opens it up, it allows the fish to move in and out. It's not happening.
Okay, let me get a report from Drew. You're on Lake Michigan. What can you tell us about the nature of the problem where you are?
Well, let's see. So one of the things that we do here at NOAA is we, along with other agencies and groups in the region, track not just Lake Michigan, but we look at all the lakes, and we have water level gauging stations across each of the lake systems. And so we're seeing some pretty interesting things happening here, certainly with regards to Lake Michigan and Huron as this one massive linked hydrologic system. We are seeing Michigan and Huron have had extended lows for the past 13 years or so. Interestingly, if you look at the data for the lower lakes, Lake Erie and Lake Ontario have really for the past 13 years been hovering right around their long-term means. Lake Superior has been below average for about 13 years or so. So we tend to take a big picture perspective on the system to try to understand what's happening. Another aspect of what's happening from a big picture perspective, the way we look at it, is much of the condition that Lake Michigan and Huron are under right now, and the folks indicating what's happening in Georgian Bay, really began about 13 years ago when water levels dropped about a meter or so over the course of 2 to 3 years. And that really set the stage for the type of things we're seeing right now.
Do you, Drew, have a good explanation for why you saw that 1 meter drop, or 2 to 3 meter drop, I guess, 13 years ago?
Yeah, when you look at the records, and we're very fortunate in this region to have a long period of record on not just the water levels, but on precipitation, evaporation, and runoff into the lakes. And we can track those over time. And what we saw leading up to the high levels of the mid-1980s, we saw a general increase in water to the system. And then right around the late 1990s, there was an abrupt shift in the amount of water that entered each of the systems, particularly Lake Superior, Lake Michigan, and Huron. And it's our perspective that the 1 meter drop that was seen over the period of that 2 to 3 years is largely associated with changes in the water budget.
Okay, let's go to Adam next. Adam, you've actually got a cottage on Georgian Bay, right?
Yeah, I'm very lucky. I have a cottage that our family's had for about 100 years, actually.
So you have heard what Mary had to say about the larger picture. From your personal standpoint, does that ring true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I was a young kid, we used to drive boats around over rocks that now you could walk across. So there's been significant change in that period. But the change dates back a lot longer than that, too. My grandmother used to tell me stories about when she was a young girl, and back then she could walk across the same rocks that we can now walk across. So I think it's drier now than it was then, but the Great Lakes and, well, the Lake Huron, Georgian Bay, Michigan, they change, they vary quite considerably over time, and they have been for a long time. This is not a new phenomenon.
Well, that's what I want to see if I can understand better. You say your grandmother could walk on the rocks, and now you're walking on the rocks. Are you here to tell us that what we're experiencing now is essentially cyclical and things will get better?
No, I think what I would say is that there are cyclical aspects to the problem. And while I think what I'm hearing, what I'm reading, and what we've heard from Drew also talks about what has happened over the last 13 years as being different. And I think the trick is, and this is always a trick in a complex ecological system, is understanding what is the cycle, what is natural, and what is an unusual change that's happening. And to be honest, I think it's pretty difficult to understand exactly or to discern what is happening right now.
Paul, let me get you to weigh in on that as to whether or not what we're seeing is natural, cyclical, or maybe a combination of each.
Well, Steve, I mean, while you can't obviously ignore the environment impact on this problem, and there's not very much we can do about the environment, what we can do is work with the things that have been man-made effects, namely the over-dredging in the St. Clair River, which are letting excess water flow out of Lake Huron down the St. Clair River, and it's not benefiting the lower lakes, it's simply going out to the ocean and gone.
Why are they doing the dredging in the St. Clair River?
I beg your pardon?
You said that the excess dredging in the St. Clair River is causing some of this. Why is that happening?
Well, in the 30s and 60s, there was a lot of dredging done by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. And when they dredged the river out, what happened was there was an increased conveyance in the river, and that increased conveyance served to mine out the bottom even further. So instead of going to what was to be the prescribed 27 feet, in many areas has now gone to over 60 feet. So you have a hugely increased volume of water that's flowing down the St. Clair River and draining out of Lake Huron.
But can I just understand, are they doing that in order to accommodate bigger ships, or what's the reason?
Shipping is I think, the main reason that the dredging is done, and they continue to do that. Some dredging of a maintenance level is, of course, required every year, but this has gone well beyond that. And the U.S. Army Corps, I know, recognized that in the 70s when they did have authorization following the dredging to place sills in the St. Clair River to stem this flow and adjust for the problem. But unfortunately, our Environment Canada bickered with them over 10 years, over a half inch, if you can imagine, of lake level. And consequently, the U.S. finally withdrew the funding.
Okay, maybe more on that a little bit later in the program. Control room, let's show these pictures now if we can. This is just off Google Earth. Okay, there they are, the Great Lakes, we all know that. And let's see how the pictures dissolve into the next one. Okay, there we get a little closer.
So you can see the St. Clair River.
There's the St. Clair River, and there's Georgian Bay. Does Georgian Bay just not look the same today as it did maybe 50 years ago? Anybody tell me that?
No, it's got a changing shoreline right now.
It does now?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Any idea, if I were having this conversation with you 50 years ago, how much higher would the shoreline have been?
4 to 5 feet.
That much?
Yes. Yes.
And are you buying we're dredging lakes, the St. Clair River, and that's why the water level is so much lower?
I'm buying the idea that was confirmed by the International Joint Commission that there is erosion taking place in the St. Clair River.
Erosion because of?
As a result of the dredging and shoreline hardening, all kinds of human activities have taken place over the past 100 years and altered forever.
Adam, what's your explanation?
Of the changes in Georgian Bay?
Yeah.
I think there's probably some element of the dredging that's involved, but I think we have to keep in mind that there are other things at play here. I mean, Drew's comments about the changes in the climate I think are really important to keep in mind. And it's whether it's climate change that is global warming or whether it's just changes in precipitation patterns, those are really important to keep in mind as well. But there are other man-made things that are at play and have been at play. And you said the last 50 years, in the 1940s, for instance, there were some significant diversions north of Lake Superior that actually increased the flow of water into the Great Lakes from water that would have otherwise gone to Hudson Bay. So, and Chicago is another example of a diversion that occurred where water is what used to flow into through the Chicago River into Lake Michigan. Now it flows the other way around. Was reversed by the U.S. to, frankly, it was a public health issue. So there's a lot of things that are happening in the Great Lakes and have been happening over the last 100 years or so. And I think, as I said before, I think it's a little difficult to know exactly what's causing what. But as I think it was Paul that said, or Mary, that you control what you can control. And we can't control precipitation terribly well, but we can have some impact on the St. Clair River, for instance.
Some of those other things. Let me try to, Drew, maybe you could come in here and help us understand why Lake Ontario and Lake Erie seem to have been affected very little by all of what we're talking about, but Michigan and Huron quite significantly. Why the difference?
Sure. One of the things that is hard to look at visually is some of the records we have of precipitation and evaporation over those lakes. It's very interesting to look at the long-term precipitation patterns, and in fact, over the lower lakes, it has simply been, on long-term average, it has been raining a lot more over the lower lakes over the past several decades, and as a result, we're seeing a lot more stability on Lake Erie in terms of the water levels. Lake Ontario is incredibly stable, not just because the water budget is stable, but also because it's tightly regulated, and water levels are controlled in the outflow to the St. Lawrence. So those are some of the factors going on there. Interestingly, it's always important to remember, and I know everyone on this call realizes that the Great Lakes are massive, and there are really separate, almost separate microclimates over each of these systems in some cases. In particular, we're seeing precipitation over Lake Superior falling over the past several decades, whereas the other lakes, particularly the lower lakes, it appears to be rising a little bit. That's just an example of the type of range of changes that we're seeing.
Let's get Paul in here now just to help us understand better what the impact of all of this might be. Now, you represent, first of all, tell us this Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Associations. You're representing organizations of what size, roughly?
Well, the Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Associations, or FOTS as we're affectionately known, has about 30 beach associations underneath it, covering about 60 miles of Georgian Bay shoreline. And in those associations, of course, there are thousands of residents. And the answer that the IJC, the Independent Joint Commission, has come back with, after 5 years and $17 million of taxpayers' money to do nothing, to us is just appalling. We just reject it out of hand. And every year, the residents are picking up dead birds and fish and sturgeon, as you saw in those pictures. What were once nice shorelines now look more like moonscapes. People cruising in their boats are hesitant now to come up because of the low water levels being very risky for damage to them. And it's a big problem. Property values devaluing, et cetera.
Well, I don't want to exaggerate the impact of this, but is it fair to say that there are businesses that are going to go under, there are towns that are going to disappear as a result of low water levels?
I don't think, honestly, you can rule that out at all. In fact, the mayors of in the townships surrounding Georgian Bay have recently completed an economic input study from all the various businesses businesses, the number they have come up with is roughly $500 million a year. I mean, that's a huge number, and all the businesses, I've attended many meetings, are scrambling to try and get loans for dredging, et cetera. And we are also now seeing and hearing that the banks are getting more and more reticent to give those loans because they see no end in sight after 14 years of decline in the lake levels.
Adam, can you talk about the impact on small business, on tourism, on the economy in Georgian Bay?
Well, not in the numbers, but I can certainly speak to it just from my personal experience. I mean, the marinas where we and other people keep our boats are absolutely having to do more dredging, and it's meaning that's a cost, it's an expense, and it's not just the cost of having a backhoe back up and dig up, pull out muck out of the water and clean it out for docks, but it's also the cost of consultants, lawyers. I mean, you have to get permits. It's not. I mean, part of what I do is help people who deal with permits and approvals for various things. And if you're going to be working in an area with fish habitat and effects on water and the life in the water, you may well have to get permits and approvals. So, you know, if a marina is not accustomed to paying for that kind of stuff, it's going to certainly increase their costs.
How often do you hear the water level's too low, I can't get my boat in the water anymore, to hell with it, I'm just selling it? It's no point anymore.
I spoke to a colleague of mine just the other day who has a cottage. He said it was on Lake Ontario, so I'm interested in hearing the numbers about Lake Ontario. But he was saying that they've gotten rid of their big boat because really they only need the little one. The big one's encumbered by lower water levels where they are. So you do see that. Up where we are, if you're on an island, like I'm lucky enough to be on what was called Island 61 when my great-grandfather purchased it 100 years ago, well, you need a boat. It's transportation. It's how you get from point A to point B. So people keep boats.
And you can still get to your island?
We're very lucky. We've got essentially a deep harbor, so we're fine. But there are lots of places where they're having to build very long docks, and there's municipalities looking at bylaw changes to allow for longer docks and they're needed because of the low water levels.
Mary, we just saw in those pictures the water level obviously is dramatically lower. There's mud where there should be water. It looked like a good 5-6 feet from where that dock went to where the water level is now. Can you talk about the economic impact as you understand it?
Yes, I can. I agree with what the number the mayors have come up with. This is horrendous. And $500 million a year, and realize that's happening all the way across Michigan and Huron too, not just in Georgian Bay. But the reality is, are we going to keep dredging and blasting to the bottom of this planet? Is the water level just going to keep going down? We don't have an answer to that question. The other lakes have the ability to retain water in them. We have nothing for this huge body of water. We need to develop some ability. And the cost is a fraction of what we're talking about in terms of the impact. So absolutely, that one photograph is a store and a gas dock that's accessible only by water. And so that's how the local people get their groceries, get their gas. They're not going to be able to go there. That place is going to shut down.
Drew, let me bring you back in here and talk about 3 letters which seem to be very important at the heart of this whole discussion. And those letters are IJC. The International Joint Commission, which, many people can blissfully live their lives without knowing anything about this organization. But apparently that's a joint Canadian-American organization whose job it is to make sure things work here. Are they doing their job?
Well, it's certainly outside of my scope to say anything that represents what the IJC does. That being said, we work in partnership with other agencies in the region, and we work in close partnership with the International Joint Commission to try to understand, and we really do work very hard to understand the water budget of the Great Lakes and the water level dynamics of the Great Lakes, and really to try to forecast those water levels as well. So I do believe that there is an honest, concerted effort going on here to try to understand this system. But I speak largely on behalf of NOAA on this and not necessarily on behalf of the IJC. Okay, understood. Paul, my hunch is you don't have quite the same reservations about talking about the IJC. What do you say?
Well, a correct assumption. I mean, to have spent all the money and all the time that the IJC has in studying this for 5 years and come up with an answer in the face of all of this scientific data, that the right answer is to do nothing, and their solution is adaptive management, which, frankly, is things like, buy floating docks that you can keep pushing further out and that sort of thing. I mean, it's absolutely absurd. There are island properties. Never mind the shoreline decimation. There are island properties that won't even be able to reach their cottages this summer.
Adam, do you think the criticism of the IJC is fair on this?
I can't really speak to the IJC's effectiveness, but what I can point out is that the IJC is not the only entity that's concerned about this. The 8 Great Lakes states and the 2 Great Lakes and St. Lawrence provinces, that is Ontario and Quebec, have over the years negotiated, entered into agreements, some binding, some not yet binding, some, but there is a regulatory system in place here, or at least under development and evolving continually, that is designed at least to address these issues. And it doesn't do it just for Georgian Bay or Lake Huron or Lake Michigan, it's doing it for the whole system. And the idea is to regulate diversions out of the water, the basin, that is like the Chicago diversion into the Mississippi, and also to regulate diversions of water across watersheds. So for instance, perhaps from Lake Simcoe conceivably to Lake Ontario, or the other way around. So there are tools in place here. I think you can quibble with whether they're effective or whether they've been fully implemented yet, and I think there's good points to be made there.
Mary, do you think the IJC is adequately seized of this issue?
No, obviously not. They have control boards for the other Great Lakes where they meet monthly and set the discharge rates. They have nothing for this huge body of water. And until we brought it to their attention, they were not even aware that the St. Clair River was eroding. And they didn't even have a flow meter measuring the flows. The other lakes, they measure the discharge rates on an hourly basis and then set monthly discharge. We have nothing.
Why not?
Simply because there's been no government oversight until we brought this to their attention. And I said, we don't even have a flow meter at the critical part in the St. Clair River, where the flow is the fastest, the river is the deepest. Finally, U.S. Geological Survey put one in. It only reads 2/3 of the way across. So I said, so how do we figure out what the total flow is, the Canadian component of it? And they said, oh, we extrapolate. And I said, isn't that just a nice word for estimating? Why doesn't Canada have one at the same location so we know what's happening there? The other lakes measured hourly.
This may be one of those things, I don't know, you tell me. You've got a provincial minister of the environment, you've got a federal minister of the environment, you've got a provincial minister of natural resources and a federal minister of natural resources. Right. And then the equivalents on the American side of the border.
Correct.
This is a multi-siloed, multi-jurisdictional thing.
Absolutely.
So if everybody's in charge, nobody's in charge?
That's right.
So
That's right. Well, it's so complex.
Who is in charge? Is anybody in charge?
That's a very, very good question. And ultimately, the IJC report back to our governments. But the work that's being done by the IJC is being carried out by our government agencies.
Okay, Drew, can you help us on that? Who's in charge of fixing this?
Well, that's a complicated question. That implies that there's fixing to be done. There are several groups whose job it is to monitor the water levels and monitor the water budget of the Great Lakes. I wouldn't say there's necessarily anybody's job to really fix anything right now, but that's my sort of opinion on behalf of NOAA and the Great Lakes Lab that I work for. There is an agency that needs to be recognized here that is the Coordinating Committee on Great Lakes Basic Hydrologic and Hydraulic Data. It's a group that's been meeting since the early 1950s, every 6 months or so, to try to understand and coordinate the data sets across these 2 countries in this massive water system. And as was pointed out earlier, it's a complicated system, it's a huge system, and we have this challenge. The Coordinating Committee is one of the groups that's trying to overcome that challenge.
All right, but when you say you're not sure that it's anybody's job to fix this, do I infer from that you believe we're just going to have to simply adapt to what is becoming a new reality?
Well, I think that if you look at the Great Lakes system over the past 100 years or so, relative to the types of water level changes that go on other coasts, particularly the marine coast of the United States, like the East Coast or the West Coast, Atlantic and Pacific Ocean, the types of changes that the Great Lakes have already adapted to are an order of magnitude greater than those on the Atlantic and the Pacific coastline, and at least the U.S. side alone of Great Lakes coastline is greater than that of the Atlantic coastline or the Pacific coastline of the U.S. So the Great Lakes already do a great job of adapting to these massive changes, and it's likely we're going to see more change in the future.
Paul, what's your view on that?
Well, first of all, I think what needs to be understood here, because he's quite correct, this is a very, very intricate labyrinth, largely a political labyrinth, sadly. And the buck stops at our governments, because the IJC, or anyone for that matter, can place all this information in front of our governments, but in the end, if they don't choose to act, which so far they haven't, then nothing happens. So if you want to know who's responsible for fixing it, they are. The IJC can give them any kind of input they wish. And I don't know, perhaps they're happy to hear do nothing because they don't have to spend any money, and they're, that's good for the voters. I'm not really sure. But, we've presented this information to our Canadian government, certainly, and in fact, given proof to Minister Clement that the U.S. Army Corps has the authorization still to proceed with these fixes. And the answers we get are very evasive and non-committal. It's very, very disappointing and disheartening.
Well, let me see if I can figure this out. You've gone to Tony Clement, the Parry Sound Muskoka MP. Why have you dealt with him on this?
Well, because he is certainly one of the Great Lakes MPs that's quite concerned and involved in this. And our hope was that he would work with Minister Baird and Prime Minister Harper, and in turn carry this forward to the United States. The problem, of course, is not just Canada's; it's shared with the U.S. And we recently formed, with a lot of the associations like FOTSA in Canada and a number of them in the U.S., a new company incorporated called Restore Our Waters International. And the reason for this is to try and get our arms around this political labyrinth, which is very challenging, to try and move forward. It's like pushing on a bowl of Jell-O.
Okay, you two gentlemen out of town, look at your computer screens. You two here in the studio, look at the monitors up above. We're going to take a closer look. Control room, I'm on page 4 here. This is the Lake Michigan, Lake Huron water levels over about the past half century. And if we look at the squiggly line on this chart, we will see that it's certainly not uniform. It does go up and down quite a bit, but if you go to where we are today, you can see that end point is about as low as it's ever been in the last half century. Now, let's get some feedback on this one. Drew, when you look at that squiggly line, what does that tell you?
It tells me that we spend a lot of time looking at this data. We spend a lot of time looking at it in relationship to what we call the net supply of water to the Great Lakes. When we talk about water levels, we typically go through a long hierarchy of different potential causes of water level dynamics. But the ones that we really tend to focus on over the time span you're looking at there are changes in precipitation, not just over the lake, but over the land as well, and changes in evaporation over the land. And when we look at that data alongside water level graphs like the one you just showed, not just for Michigan Huron, but for all of the lake systems, we see a pretty strong relationship, and it makes sense, to the amount of water that's coming into or leaving the system and the tendency of water levels to go up or down.
Okay, Mary, as I look at the graph here, it was pretty high in 1920, pretty low in the mid-20s, pretty high in 1930, pretty low in 1940, pretty high in 1950, pretty low in the 1960s, back up there in the 70s. Here, we're looking at the graphic again. We go back in the mid-1980s, it's back up there. Then in the mid-90s, it's coming down. And in the aughts, it's coming down, down, down even further. Does that suggest, as Adam suggested earlier, that this is more cyclical than anything?
There are cycles to the Great Lakes, no question about that, and weather plays a factor. But the only other times that it's been this low in Michigan, Huron, Georgian Bay, is when navigation dredging took place in the St. Clair River in the 1960s, in the 1930s, in the 1920s. And even going back into the early 1900s when they did sand and gravel mining of the St. Clair River bed. They removed a natural sand and gravel bar that acted as a natural weir. They took that out for construction purposes. Nobody considered what the impact would be. So you can look at all of those low water levels and they line up exactly with when navigation dredging or human activities took place in the St. Clair River.
So if somehow we were able to stop dredging that St. Clair River, do you think this problem goes away?
Absolutely.
So who do you talk to get them to stop dredging the St. Clair River?
Well, nobody's going to stop doing that because that would shut down shipping. But the reality is the U.S. Army Corps have admitted that they have authorization to put submerged sills into the St. Clair River.
Put some what, sorry?
Submerged sills into the St. Clair River.
What are those?
You people have a drawing of what they look like.
Okay, we're going to put it up right now. What'd you call it again? Submerged?
Submerged sills. The
Sills.
other word for them is speed bumps.
Okay, here we go. Describe that if you would.
Okay, so you could see the little box kind of structure down on the bottom. You could see the flow of the river coming down, and that's a ship going up the river. So these would lie underneath the depth needed for shipping, and they act as speed bumps, and there would be a series of these that would reduce the flow. And they would be put in gradually, and they could restore water levels upstream. And once equilibrium was reached, there would be no impact downstream. But you put them in gradually, so there's no impact downstream.
How much would it cost to do that?
Between $100 and $200 million over several years, 4 or 5 years, and shared by both countries.
But it might save $500 million a year in lost economy.
Just on Georgian Bay.
That's just Georgian Bay.
That's right.
So financially, for you, it makes sense.
Absolutely.
What do you think of this, Adam?
Well, I think it makes sense to do what we can, and I think the Great Lakes, as we've said, is a dynamic system. The lake levels have gone up and down over the millennia. It wasn't. I mean, in our lifetimes, we know what the numbers look like, but it's really, 1,000 years ago isn't all that long, and frankly, the levels have gone up dramatically over time for different reasons. So, I think the trick is, do we want to manage the lake levels to a degree to keep the environment the way we see it now? I think we have to accept that, yes, we can do that to a degree, but over time, you know what, there is going to be significant change that we can't control. So it's a bit of a mix. You want to do what you can to protect the environment and protect what we love and what we think is valuable. At the same time, we are going to have to acknowledge over time that, for instance, the east side of Georgian Bay is over millennia going to become drier because the land is still rebounding from the last glaciation. The land is still rising, which means the water will slowly slosh out over thousands of years. But we're not talking about thousands of years right now. We're talking about an economy that's going to have an impact, or things that will have an impact on an economy over decades. So I think it's worth certainly looking into what can be done. But I think we have to acknowledge also that it's not always going to be a complete solution to the problem.
Paul, what do you think of this idea of putting these sills in bit by bit over the years in order to help alleviate this difficulty?
Well, again, organizations like NOAA help us a lot in understanding what the environmental impacts and causes are. But at the end of the day, while they're intellectually interesting, they don't give us any solutions. What we do have control over are the man-made causes that we can affect, namely the St. Clair River, and putting these sills in by admission of the U.S. Army Corps, who are certainly one of the experts in this matter, never mind other hydrologists that are on the Sierra Club, that they will have a very positive impact on beginning to restore the lake levels over a 10-year period. I mean, and the cost of getting that started isn't 100 or 200 million, it's 10 million. That would get USAS started to do the pre-studies. And, when you divide even 200 million by Canada and the US and spread it over 5 years, it's inconsequential compared to the economic impacts we're talking about here.
Do you know anybody in government on either side of the border who seems interested in pursuing this idea?
I do not.
Why not?
I can't answer that because, as a reasonable man, I got to say, in the face of all this data and information, I can't imagine why anyone would look at this and understand the man-made impacts here and not get that there are some things that we can move to be done. It's beyond me why nobody seems to be reacting to it.
Drew, as a hydrologist, are you in favor of this idea of putting these sills in?
I'm not going to comment at all on the sills. But one thing I do want to point out is that when we talk about data and we talk about looking at information, there is some important information that the figure you showed earlier doesn't relate, and that is what was happening on the other lake systems at the exact same time. So we looked at these periods of highs, we identified these lows, highs and lows, highs and lows. I think it would be very interesting for the audience to take a look at what was happening on the other lake systems at those times as well. I happen to be looking at one of those plots on my computer screen behind what I'm looking at now. And it's very interesting to see that the lakes during those early time periods, particularly during the 1920s and 30s, followed very similar patterns in terms of going up and down. What that indicates to me is that there were some forces at play that were acting equally on all of the lakes, driving them up and driving them down, and that we want to look very carefully at those causes before we start talking about other interventions.
Okay, Mary, I don't want to put words in Drew's mouth, but it sounds like he is admonishing us not to overreact here. Is that an appropriate reaction in your view?
No, I don't think so. I think this can be done responsibly and environmentally responsibly. I mean, right now, the do nothing recommendation from the IJC is basically resulting in this massive amount of dredging, and I've been up there to witness it. You know, nobody's taking sediment samples to find out what contaminants are in the sediments right now, and they're just disposing of them, in many cases, right along the shoreline at a total cost of all of this of $500 million a year. When there's a viable solution that can be put into St. Clair River gradually. It's been recommended many, many times. When the Seaway was designed, originally, they designed locks and control gates for the St. Clair River. We know that, A, that's not a good idea environmentally, cost huge. We know that doesn't need to happen. We're saying let's deal with this responsibly because we've got a big gap going on right now. I hear what he's saying. All the lake levels were low last summer. But hey, you know what? They've recovered. Erie and Ontario have come back up very close to their long-term averages. But Michigan, Huron, Georgian Bay, 70 centimeters below their long-term average. That's not happening anywhere else.
Adam, you want in?
Yeah, I think the one thing that hasn't come up that much, we've talked about precipitation, we've talked about a number of factors. One thing we haven't talked about much is climate change. I mean, I think it's probably an assumption by those people in this conversation right now that it's happening. I think one observation I would have is, I mean, aside from my other personal stuff at ground level, in the 90s, I was doing a fair bit of work in Northern Ontario, and I used to fly over Georgian Bay through the winter quite a bit. And I don't know if you remember, but at that time, we had a fair bit of cold weather. And Georgian Bay in the mid-90s was freezing over completely. And it's quite a sight, actually. You're flying over it, and you see cracks that go 50 miles. Huh. But Georgian Bay is not freezing over anymore, at least not recently. So not only do we have less precipitation, but we also have no ice cover, which does a couple things. It doesn't hold up that precipitation sitting on top and floating there until the spring. Also, it allows for a lot more evaporation all winter long. So, you know, and the amount of evaporation from the lakes, I don't know the precise figures, but if you were to stand at the St. Lawrence River and watch the water going by, the amount of water that you can see what's leaving the Great Lakes because it's going by you. The amount that's evaporating at any given time is somewhere around 65 or 70% the volume of the St. Lawrence River.
And you can't see it.
You can't see it. So you can't know what's going on.
Well, okay, I've got a checklist here, and very good. We've got climate change on the checklist. We've got, you can't call it man-made anymore, can you? What do you call it now?
Human.
Human-made, okay. Humans being responsible for the dredging of the St. Clair River. We've talked about nature. We've talked a little bit about consumption. I want to talk about one more thing at the risk of having all of you call me nuts. But I will tell you that when I spend my summers on Manitoulin Island, there are lots of people, and I don't think they're alone in this, there are people who believe that there is some kind of secret agreement between the Canadian and American governments essentially to have Americans steal our water. Now that's out there. That's what lots of people believe. I'd like to hear your feedback on this. Mary, what do you think? Is that anything to it?
Hear it many times, many, many times.
Is there anything to it?
No, there's nothing to it. No.
How do you know?
There's all kinds of monitoring, as Drew has pointed out, that's taking place right now. And right now, because of the agreement in terms of withdrawals, that is all now being monitoring. All of the states and provinces have had to ramp up their oversight of those kind of activities. And the only diversion out is at Chicago. And right now, you know, guess what? Lake Michigan levels are so low that diversion is threatened. And when there's a strong south wind, they open up the locks at Chicago and out goes the Chicago Sanitary Canal. So the diversion is actually being reversed some of the time. So no, and every time I speak, there's always someone in the audience who put up their hands and said, isn't this just the Americans taking our water?
Well, let me ask Drew. Drew, are you stealing our water?
As you can probably guess from the nature of my responses on this call, I'm a sort of a data-driven person. I really don't have any evidence to support any claim like that. It's something I hadn't really thought about.
Drew, the truth is out there. It's an X-file. Are you stealing our water?
I don't know what to say.
Okay, well, Paul, let me put it to you. Do you hear this claim made, and what do you think of it?
I've heard of it lots of times, but as has been said many times, this is an extremely complex topic. And, you know, to put it in perspective, the Chicago diversion, as an example, compared to the excess flow down the St. Clair River, the St. Clair River flow is 3 times that of the Chicago diversion. And the increased conveyance down the St. Clair is the equivalent of 2 Olympic-sized swimming pools per second that are going down the St. Clair that are in excess of what the Great Lakes are capable of recovering naturally, notwithstanding environment, every year, which is only about, I believe, and our NOAA expert can perhaps comment on this, about 1% of their volume. So, all roads seem to come back to the St. Clair River and doing what we can do to put these sills in and stem the flow. And keeping in mind, if God willing, the lake level should come back and we need to remove the sills, then they're removable. So to me, it sounds like a pretty sane solution and a pretty economically viable one.
I want to just take everybody back about 25 years, I think, when there was a coming together of not just environmentalists and not just tourism people, but also other business operators, political leaders, and everybody on both sides of the border decided we really got to do something about acid rain. And they all came together and they all solved it.
Correct.
And the lakes came back, right? Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. The lakes that were dead came back once we took the toxicity out of them. Mm-hmm. Do you see a similar, Mary, do you see a similar moment, a coming together happening here of all of the different interests required to fix this?
Absolutely, absolutely. And there is a retired U.S. senator who took that acid rain legislation through the U.S. Congress. And I've spoken with him, he sees absolutely...
Who is it?
Jerry Sikorsky.
Okay.
He was a senator for Minnesota for many years. And he absolutely sees a pattern happening here that he recognizes. We recently were in Washington and met with the Council of Environmental Quality in the White House. They are very interested in this. They know the economic impact, and they're saying, thank you for coming down here, providing this information. If there's a solution to this, we need to look into this. So that's a good sign. That's right within the White House.
My recollection, Adam, is that your cottage neighbor, Bill Davis, was made the acid rain commissioner for Canada, and he negotiated the deal. You want to put him back to work and see if he can do something about this?
Oh, he knows this stuff well. I've actually chatted with him about it on the dock once or twice, and I don't know, he might be interested in the gig.
I think he's available, for what it's worth. We've got about 5 minutes left here, and I want to touch on one more thing for sure. In the field of economics, there's something called the tragedy of the commons, in which basically everybody sort of depletes a resource for his or her own good as an individual, with not much care or concern for the fact that if everybody behaves the same way, the resource is depleted and then everybody, the commons, at the end of the day is deprived of this. I want to know, Adam, is that what's happening in the Great Lakes right now?
No, I don't think so. I think it's something, as Mary has pointed out, that we want to worry about. But the tragedy of the commons was written in the context of an unregulated or uncontrolled commons. We're maybe not doing it well enough yet, but we are regulating the Great Lakes, and they are controlled to a degree. So I think that the analogy is worth considering, but there are differences now. It's not so much about the tragedy of an unregulated commons, it's about, are we regulating it properly? And do we have the interests of all those people that use the commons at heart when we do it?
Paul, I think it was about 20 years ago, we fished for cod so much off the coast of Newfoundland that eventually one day there was no cod left, and we had to stop fishing for a long time to let it come back. Are you seeing a similar tragedy of the commons happening here in the Great Lakes?
Well, I don't think that anyone premeditatedly is trying to either steal the water or improperly use it. I think we're being quite responsible that way. But this problem, the St. Clair River, is categorically being ignored, and by our governments. I just fail to understand it, and particularly in view of the small sums of money in relative terms that it would take to put a solution in place. I don't see why they do it. I mean, I can tell you, I fished for cod 30 years ago down on the East Coast and caught about 90 of them in an hour. You wouldn't do that today. And if you want to see an example of what can happen, then look at Lake Chad in Africa, for example. It's dry. It's gone. One of the largest lakes in the world. So don't think it can't happen to us. And to Adam's point, though, I'd like to say that, the reality is Lake Superior, Erie, and Ontario are regulated. Michigan and Huron are not. And so that's a huge problem, and we need to step up to it.
Is that right? They're not. Those two of the five are not regulated?
Lake Michigan, Huron, Georgian Bay, not regulated.
Not regulated.
Absolutely no, nothing.
So what
And
can you do about that then? If it's not regulated, what can you do?
Well, we think there should be an outflow monitoring board, so they're measuring what the flow rate is, and then once the sills are in, they'll be able to see what the benefits are, and to be able to manage that finite resource mainly. We think that needs to be done. In terms of the threat to the commons, I mean, it's heartbreaking, some of the messages that people are posting on our website. It's absolutely heartbreaking. Such as this is a finite, valuable resource that other people in other parts of the world would absolutely think we were foolish not to manage it more responsibly. And saying things like, the waterfront has changed. I want my children, my grandchildren to be able to enjoy this. It's not happening. I don't even want to be at my cottage. There's so much algae growth. I can't get into the water anyway. So, you know,
That was a front page New York Times story just a few days ago about the anticipation for this summer over Lake Erie with the massive more amounts of algae in the water because of, well, I guess mostly because of nature.
It's happening on Georgian Bay. We're used to seeing those photographs of Lake Erie, but last summer there was a large enough algal bloom north of Parry Sound that it was visible on Google Earth. I mean, we're not used to seeing that on Georgian Bay, and I think the governments just want to pretend it's not happening, but it's happening.
Drew, do we need more regulation for Michigan and Huron and Georgian Bay, in your view?
Well, that's not a question I'm really prepared to answer. It's definitely not part of my job, nor part of my personal opinion about imposing a regulation on the outlet of Michigan and Huron. What I do think, this is a really good conversation, and I like the way it's going. What I really think is important to do in cases like this is to get people to sit down at the same table, similar to the kind of conversation we're having here, look at the relative impacts of all the different causal factors on this, including the dredging, including the isostatic rebound that was mentioned earlier, including the changes in meteorology and climate, and try to tease out which ones are the most significant, which ones we can control, and which ones we might want to try to mitigate if we can at all.
Okay, Drew, I hear you, but who's going to pull that meeting together?
Well, we have meetings like that all the time. We got to keep in mind this is a huge system. So those of us on the call are over a large geographic area, but we're on the right track to getting these groups of people together, I believe.
Paul, do you think we're on the right track?
I think we got a long ways to go. Our new organization, Restore Our Waters International Incorporated, which has a website, restoreourwater.com, I think is doing a lot of great work with the help of Roger Gaucher, our chairman in Michigan, to bring try and galvanize all the groups and bring them together to try and bring this to a head. But so far, our single biggest challenge is to get the governments pulling in on an oar in the boat, if you will, to try and bring a solution. Look, to start this is $10 million. That's $5 million per country. They spill more of that on the floor counting the GSD every day. So I just think it's so easy and totally irresponsible, for them to not be doing something about this.
We're going to give the man the furthest away from our studio the last word on this. Thanks so much, everybody, for participating tonight. Paul Cowley from Naples, Florida, the president of the Federation of Tiny Township Shoreline Associations. Drew Grunwald from Ann Arbor, Michigan. He's the hydrologist with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Here in our studios, Mary Mutter, chair of the Great Lakes section of the Sierra Club of Ontario, and Adam Chamberlain, the environmental law specialist at Borden, Ladner, Gervais, LLP. Appreciate your time, everybody.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.